The morning sun cast a golden glow over the historic walls of Windsor Castle as crowds began gathering along the ancient stone pathways. 7-year-old Princess Charlotte walked between her parents, Prince William and Princess Catherine, her small hand clasped firmly in her mother's gentle grip. The young princess wore a navy blue coat with matching velvet collar, her brown hair tied back with a silk ribbon that caught the light with each step she took. Among the sea of tourists and royal watchers stood James Mitchell, a 28-year-old King's Guard who had served at the castle for 3 years. He maintained his position near the castle gates, dressed in the traditional scarlet tunic and bearskin hat that had become symbols of British tradition. His eyes remained fixed ahead, face expressionless as hundreds of visitors passed by, many stopping to take photographs with the motionless guards. The royal family's unexpected appearance that September morning sent ripples of excitement through the gathered crowd. Phones emerged from pockets and purses as people jostled for the perfect angle to capture a glimpse of the future king and his family. The security detail moved smoothly alongside them, creating an invisible barrier between the royals and the increasingly enthusiastic public. Princess Charlotte, despite her young age, carried herself with a natural grace that seemed to come effortlessly. She had grown accustomed to the constant attention, the flash of cameras, and the excited whispers that followed her family wherever they went. Yet there remained something refreshingly genuine about her demeanor, a sparkle in her eyes that suggested she saw the world not through the lens of royal duty, but through the wonder of childhood. As the family approached the guard post where James Mitchell stood, something unexpected happened. Charlotte suddenly broke away from her mother's hand and skipped ahead, her patent leather shoes clicking against the cobblestones. Prince William reached out instinctively, but Princess Catherine touched his arm gently, allowing their daughter a moment of freedom within the secure perimeter. The crowd held its collective breath as the young princess approached the stoic guard. James Mitchell had been trained to remain completely still, to show no emotion regardless of what happened around him. Tourists had tried everything over the years, making faces, telling jokes, even proposing marriage, but nothing had ever caused him to break his professional composure. Charlotte stopped directly in front of the guard, tilting her head back to look up at the tall figure before her. The size difference was almost comical. The top of her head barely reached his waist. She studied him with the uninhibited curiosity that only children possess, her eyes traveling from his polished boots to the impressive bearskin hat that added another foot to his already considerable height. "Hello, Mr. Guard," she said in a clear, confident voice that carried across the courtyard. The crowd fell silent, straining to hear the interaction. "Are you very hot in that big fuzzy hat?" James Mitchell remained perfectly still, eyes focused on a point somewhere beyond the castle walls. His training had prepared him for many scenarios, but a direct address from a member of the royal family, especially the adorable Princess Charlotte, had not been extensively covered in the manual. Charlotte waited patiently for a response, rocking slightly on her heels. When none came, she tried a different approach. "My mummy says you're not allowed to talk when you're working. That must be very hard. I couldn't stay quiet for that long. Yesterday I tried to be quiet during tea, and I only lasted 3 minutes before I had to tell everyone about the butterfly I saw in the garden." Behind her, Prince William and Princess Catherine exchanged amused glances. They made no move to collect their daughter, recognizing one of those magical moments that would become part of family lore. The Duke of Cambridge had his phone discreetly in his hand, capturing the scene from his unique vantage point. The crowd around them had grown considerably, with people streaming in from other parts of the castle grounds as word spread that the young princess was attempting to charm one of the guards. Social media was already buzzing with blurry photos and shaky videos, but those present were experiencing something special, a glimpse of the monarchy's future through the innocent actions of a child. Charlotte, undeterred by the guard's silence, continued her one-sided conversation. "I think being a guard must be very important work. You're protecting the castle, aren't you? Like the knights in my storybooks, except you don't have a horse." "Do you wish you had a horse? I think a horse would make the job more fun, but then you'd have to feed it and brush it, and horses are very big, much bigger than my pony Butterfly. Yes, I named her after my favorite insect." Sarah Chen, a tourist from Singapore, stood among the crowd with her camera focused on the scene. She had been photographing the castle architecture when the royal family appeared, and now found herself capturing what would become one of the most shared images of the year. Through her lens, she could see something others might miss: the slightest change in the guard's expression. As Charlotte chattered on about horses and butterflies, explaining in great detail why she thought the guard's buttons were magnificently shiny, James Mitchell's eyes flickered downward for just a fraction of a second. It was barely perceptible, a movement so slight that only those watching intently would notice. But in that brief moment, the corner of his mouth twitched upward in what could only be described as the beginning of a smile. The young princess, always observant, caught the minute change immediately. "Oh," she exclaimed with delight, "you almost smiled. I saw it. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone you broke the rules." She stage-whispered the last part, though her voice carried clearly to the amused onlookers. Princess Catherine stepped forward then, her movement graceful and unhurried. "Charlotte, darling, I think we should let the guard continue his important work," she said gently, extending her hand to her daughter. Charlotte took her mother's hand but turned back to the guard one more time. "Thank you for listening to my stories, Mr. Guard. I hope you have a lovely day, even if you can't say it back." Then, in a gesture that would melt hearts around the world, she performed a perfect little curtsy before skipping back to her parents. The family continued their walk through the castle grounds, Charlotte now chattering excitedly to her younger brother Prince Louis about her encounter with the very tall, very quiet guard. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the buzz of excitement remained. Phones were checked and rechecked as people shared their photos and videos, each hoping they had captured the magic of the moment. James Mitchell returned to his state of perfect stillness, but something had changed. Those who looked closely enough might notice a new warmth in his eyes, a subtle softening of his expression that hadn't been there before. He had been trained to resist all distractions, to remain unmoved by any attempt to break his concentration. But he had not been prepared for the genuine sweetness of a 7-year-old princess who saw him not as a tourist attraction or a challenge to overcome, but simply as a person worth talking to. As the morning progressed, more visitors came to see the guards, many now specifically seeking out James Mitchell after hearing about the princess's visit. He remained professional, giving no indication that anything unusual had occurred. But those who had witnessed the encounter knew they had seen something special, a moment when royal protocol met childhood innocence, and for just an instant, humanity won. The images and videos began circulating online within minutes. Sarah Chen's perfectly timed photograph, capturing the exact moment the guard's expression softened while looking down at Princess Charlotte, was shared first among her friends, then by local British news outlets, before eventually making its way around the globe. The image was everything the modern world loved: authentic, heartwarming, and utterly charming. Royal watchers and body language experts would later analyze every frame of the available footage, discussing the significance of the guard's momentary break in composure. Some called it a breach of protocol, while others celebrated it as a beautiful human moment that showed even the most disciplined professionals could be touched by the innocent charm of a child. But for James Mitchell, standing at his post as the sun climbed higher in the sky, it was simpler than that. In his 3 years of service, he had perfected the art of stillness, had become a master of emotional control. Yet in that brief encounter with Princess Charlotte, he had been reminded of something important, that beneath the uniform and the tradition, Beyond the tourists and the ceremony, there remained the simple human connections that make life meaningful. The rest of his shift passed without incident, though he noticed more smiles directed his way, more children waving hopefully as they passed. He maintained his professional demeanor, eyes forward, face impassive. But somewhere deep inside, carefully hidden from view, the warmth of that moment lingered. A tiny spark of joy kindled by a princess who had seen not just a guard, but a person worth greeting on a sunny September morning. The transformation from a quiet morning encounter to a global phenomenon happened with the speed that only the internet age could facilitate. Sarah Chen sat in a cafe near Windsor Castle, uploading her photographs while sipping Earl Grey tea. Her fingers hesitated over the share button, wondering if she had captured something too private, too precious for the digital world. But the image was irresistible. The tall guard looking down, Princess Charlotte gazing up, and that fleeting moment of human connection frozen in time. Within an hour, her photograph had been shared over 1,000 times. Friends tagged friends, parents showed their children, and news aggregators began picking up the story. The image quality was exceptional, the timing perfect, and the subject matter universally appealing. It was the kind of content that transcended cultural boundaries and language barriers. Meanwhile, James Mitchell completed his shift unaware of the storm brewing in the digital realm. He handed over his post to the afternoon guard, went through the familiar routine of returning his ceremonial uniform, and changed into civilian clothes. His fellow guards noticed something different about him. A lightness in his step, perhaps, or a hint of a smile that seemed to linger at the corners of his mouth. "Heard you had a royal visitor today," commented Thomas Bradley, a fellow guard who had been stationed at the other end of the courtyard. "The little princess, wasn't it?" James nodded, maintaining the discretion that was expected even off-duty. "She was very polite," he said simply, though the words hardly captured the charm of the encounter. As he made his way home to his flat in nearby Eton, James's phone began buzzing with increasing frequency. His sister Emma had sent a message with multiple exclamation marks. "Is this you?" followed by a link to a Twitter post. With growing bewilderment, he opened the link to find himself staring at Sarah Chen's photograph, now accompanied by thousands of comments in dozens of languages. The caption read, "The moment when Princess Charlotte melted the heart of a king's guard at Windsor Castle. Even the most disciplined soldier couldn't resist her charm." The metrics below the image were staggering, already approaching 1 million likes and hundreds of thousands of shares. James sat down heavily on a bench in the park, scrolling through the endless stream of responses. People from around the world were sharing their own stories of encounters with guards, praising Princess Charlotte's confidence, and most surprisingly, complimenting him for showing a glimpse of humanity in a role known for its rigid formality. Back at Kensington Palace, the royal family's communication team was monitoring the viral spread with a mixture of delight and concern. Marcus Hamilton, the senior press officer, called an impromptu meeting as the story began trending globally. The hashtags Cheer Princess Charlotte Charms and The Guard, who smiled, were climbing rapidly in usage. "It's entirely positive," reported Julia Foster, the social media manager, her laptop open to multiple monitoring dashboards. "The public absolutely loves it. We're seeing engagement rates we haven't had since the Platinum Jubilee." Prince William and Princess Catherine were briefed on the situation that evening. They reviewed the footage and images together, William's amateur video from his phone providing a delightful behind-the-scenes perspective that the public hadn't seen. "Should we be concerned about the guard?" Catherine asked, ever mindful of how their actions might impact others. "I hope he doesn't face any difficulties because Charlotte was being her usual chatty self." The palace made discreet inquiries and were assured that James Mitchell had conducted himself appropriately. The slight break in composure, they were told, fell well within acceptable boundaries given the unique circumstances. If anything, His response had humanized an institution that sometimes seemed frozen in time. As night fell, the story had been picked up by major news outlets across 6 continents. The BBC ran a segment on the evening news complete with expert commentary on the changing face of the monarchy. American morning shows were already planning features for the next day, and Japanese variety programs were creating animated recreations of the encounter. Emma Mitchell watched the coverage from her home in Manchester, tears of pride in her eyes. She remembered her younger brother James as a shy boy who had found purpose and confidence in military service. To see him at the center of such a positive story, bringing joy to millions simply by being human for a moment, filled her with an emotion she couldn't quite name. She wasn't the only one moved by the story. In a pediatric ward in Toronto, a mother showed the video to her daughter who was undergoing treatment for leukemia. The little girl laughed for the first time in days, declaring that she wanted to meet a guard just like Princess Charlotte had. The mother shared this reaction online, adding another layer to the viral narrative. Veterans organizations praised the guard's professional conduct while acknowledging the impossible situation of being addressed by a young royal. Child development experts wrote think pieces about Princess Charlotte's emotional intelligence and confidence. Fashion blogs analyzed her outfit, noting how her classic style reflected her mother's influence while maintaining its own youthful flair. But perhaps the most meaningful responses came from current and former guards themselves. A private Facebook group for King's Guards, usually devoted to sharing memories and maintaining connections, exploded with activity. Many shared their own close calls, times when they had nearly broken composure due to surprising, touching, or hilarious encounters with the public. "I once had a proposal, a medical emergency, and a flash mob all in the same shift," wrote one retired guard. "But I think a conversation with Princess Charlotte would have broken me, too. Well done for lasting as long as you did, mate." The endorsement from his peers meant more to James than all the celebrity retweets combined. He had worried, in those first hours, that he might face criticism or even disciplinary action. Instead, he found understanding and even admiration from those who truly understood the challenges of the role. By midnight, the story had evolved beyond simple sharing. Artists were creating illustrations of the moment, some photorealistic, others whimsically cartoon-like. A prominent street artist in London was already planning a mural. Merchandise appeared on print-on-demand sites, though the palace would quickly move to protect both the princess's image and the guard's privacy. The Chinese social media platform Weibo saw particular enthusiasm for the story, with users praising both the little princess's brave heart and the gentle giant guard. Cultural commentators noted how the interaction represented a perfect balance of tradition and modernity, ancient protocols meeting contemporary values of emotional authenticity. In his flat, James Mitchell finally turned off his phone, overwhelmed by the deluge of notifications. He had given no interviews, made no statements, and had politely declined offers from talent agencies who somehow obtained his contact information. His training had taught him discipline, and he applied it now to maintaining his privacy. Yet, as he prepared for bed, he found himself thinking not about the viral fame or the global attention, but about the little princess who had seen him as more than a uniform and a duty. In all his years of service, through ceremonies and celebrations, through long hours of standing motionless in all weather, he had never experienced anything quite like that moment of genuine human connection. Somewhere across the city, Princess Charlotte was already asleep, unaware that her simple act of kindness had touched millions of hearts. Her parents had decided to shield her from the full extent of the viral reaction, allowing her to remain simply a 7-year-old girl who had wanted to chat with a guard at the castle. The royal family's decision to neither confirm nor deny the authenticity of the encounter, though the visual evidence was overwhelming, added to its mystique. They issued no official statement, made no attempt to capitalize on the positive publicity. This restraint only enhanced the story's appeal. It remained a pure moment, unpackaged and unspun by public relations machinery. Media analysts would later study the viral spread as a perfect example of organic content distribution. No marketing budget could have achieved such reach. No carefully crafted campaign could have generated such genuine emotional response. It succeeded because it was real, because it showed two people, one very small, one very tall, one very young, one trained to be impassive, sharing a moment of simple human recognition. As the city slept, the story continued its journey westward, catching fire in New York, Los Angeles, and Vancouver. Morning show producers adjusted their rundowns, social media managers scheduled posts, and assignment editors dispatched reporters to gather local angles. A moment that had lasted perhaps 3 minutes would generate days of content, countless discussions, and immeasurable smiles. The guard who almost smiled and the princess who noticed had created something larger than either could have imagined, a reminder that beneath all our roles and responsibilities, our uniforms and our duties, we remain fundamentally human, capable of connection across any divide. In an increasingly polarized world, it was a message that resonated with unexpected power. 3 months had passed since the September morning that changed everything. The viral moment had evolved from breaking news to beloved memory, taking its place among those rare instances of pure joy that the internet occasionally delivers. Coffee shops in London still displayed printed copies of Sarah Chen's photograph, and parents around the world continued to share the story with their children as an example of kindness and grace. James Mitchell had returned to his duties with quiet dignity, neither seeking attention nor shying away from his newfound recognition. His supervisors had ultimately commended his handling of the situation, noting that he had maintained professional standards while displaying the humanity that made the King's Guard relatable to a new generation. Tourists now specifically sought him out, hoping to recreate the magic, though he remained steadfastly professional in all interactions. The impact rippled outward in unexpected ways. The Guard Museum at Wellington Barracks reported a 40% increase in visitors, with many families bringing young children eager to learn about the history and traditions of the Royal Guards. A children's book inspired by the encounter, though fictionalized to protect privacy, became a bestseller, with proceeds benefiting military families. Princess Charlotte, meanwhile, continued her normal routine of school, family time, and occasional public appearances. Her parents had handled the viral fame with characteristic wisdom, explaining to her that while her kindness had made many people happy, she should continue to treat everyone with the same genuine warmth, whether cameras were present or not. The young princess, wise beyond her years, seemed to understand intuitively that authentic behavior was more valuable than performed charm. The story took an unexpected turn during the Christmas season. The royal family was scheduled to attend a special carol service at Windsor Castle, a tradition that brought together military personnel, local dignitaries, and selected members of the public. By pure coincidence, or perhaps by gentle orchestration from someone who understood the power of full-circle moments, James Mitchell was assigned to ceremonial duty that evening. Snow had begun falling as guests arrived, transforming the castle grounds into something from a fairy tale. The guard stood at his post near the chapel entrance, the red of his tunic stark against the white landscape. He had been briefed that the royal family would be attending, though the chances of another interaction seemed remote. As the service concluded and guests began departing, the royal family emerged into the snowy evening. Princess Charlotte, dressed in a deep green coat with fur trim, walked between her parents. Her eyes sparkled with excitement at the snow, and she had to be gently reminded not to try catching snowflakes on her tongue in such a formal setting. Then she saw him. Even among the several guards posted for the event, she recognized James Mitchell immediately. Her face lit up with the pure delight that only children can express. This time, however, she looked up at her mother first, a silent question in her eyes. Princess Catherine smiled and nodded almost imperceptibly. Charlotte approached the guard with the same confident steps, though perhaps with a touch more understanding of the moment's significance. She stopped at a respectful distance. She had learned about proper protocol in the intervening months, and spoke clearly enough for nearby observers to hear. "Happy Christmas, Mr. Guard," she said, her voice carrying that same genuine warmth that had charmed the world months earlier. "I remember you from September. I hope you've been well." This time, something different happened. Whether due to the special nature of the Christmas service, a slight relaxation in protocol for the holiday, or simply an acknowledgement of their unique connection, James Mitchell broke tradition. He looked directly at Princess Charlotte, made clear eye contact, and spoke. "Happy Christmas, Your Royal Highness," he said, his deep voice gentle. "Thank you for your kindness." The exchange lasted only seconds, but for those present, it felt like witnessing something magical. Charlotte beamed, performed another of her perfect curtsies, and returned to her family. As they walked away, she could be heard telling Prince George, "That's my friend, the guard who listens to butterfly stories." This second encounter, captured by official photographers rather than tourists, became the perfect epilogue to their viral story. The image of the guard speaking to the princess, snow falling around them like a scene from a globe, graced Christmas cards the following year. More importantly, it showed that some connections transcend single moments. James Mitchell continued his service with distinction, eventually being selected for advanced positions within the King's Guard. He became an unofficial ambassador for the regiment, his story used in recruitment materials to show that discipline and humanity were not mutually exclusive. Years later, he would tell new recruits that the greatest honor of his service was not the ceremonies or the traditions, but the moment a little princess reminded him that kindness was universal. Princess Charlotte grew into her role with remarkable poise, her early display of confidence and compassion proving to be not merely childish boldness but genuine character. Royal biographers would later note that the Guard incident, as it came to be known within palace circles, marked a turning point in how the younger royals engaged with those who served the crown, with recognition of their humanity alongside respect for their service. The photograph taken by Sarah Chen found its permanent home in the National Portrait Gallery, part of an exhibition on moments that defined modern Britain. Visitors would pause before it, parents explaining to children, couples sharing smiles, elderly visitors remembering their own encounters with unexpected grace. In the end, the story of Princess Charlotte and the guard who almost smiled became more than a viral moment. It became a reminder that, in an age of careful image management and calculated interactions, authentic human connection could still break through. It showed that tradition and warmth could coexist, that duty did not require the absence of heart, and that sometimes the smallest gestures, a child's greeting, a guard's flickering smile, could remind an entire world of our shared humanity. As London continued its eternal dance between history and progress, between ceremony and spontaneity, the legacy of that September morning lived on. Not in the millions of views or shares, not in the headlines or the commentary, but in the simple truth it revealed. That kindness, offered freely and received graciously, remains the most powerful force for connection across any divide. And sometimes, all it takes is a 7-year-old princess, brave enough to say hello to a very tall, very quiet guard on a sunny morning at Windsor Castle.